Welcome everyone to this masterclass that we are holding on the subject Earth observations for agricultural applications, fact versus fiction. This is the first of its kind that we are holding at ThinkEd platform, especially given the interest that we see in the subject. We are seeing a huge amount of application of satellite imagery for the purpose of detecting land boundaries, for the purpose of detecting crop signatures, yield estimation, figuring out harvest schedules. So lots happening, and there are multiple stakeholders who are benefiting out of it. Clearly, you can estimate the demand, you can estimate the production, and the data is used a lot by the market linkage players who buy from farmers. But a large use cases emerge in terms of lending to farmers, because that's always a challenge for bankers, figuring out, data about the farm, from sowing to harvest, figuring out risk mitigation strategy, etc. So I think satellite imagery has played a huge role in building interesting models which can potentially be used by financial institutions and bankers for the purpose of lending to farmers. And of course, another big use case is crop insurance, because you can estimate crop loss damage due to flood, drought, climate events with a reasonable amount of accuracy. So I think all of us have our impressions on what it can do, what it cannot do. So we thought it's good to bring together all the stakeholders on the same platform and talk about it. And we are very fortunate to have SatSure as a partner for this event. You must be aware about SatSure. It's a deep tech data intelligence company with demonstrated use cases in agricultural applications in particular, with the use of satellite imagery. They're the pioneers, I would say, in building a lot of these models. Very recently, SatSure and TransUnion Civil launched a farm credit score product, which is being used by public sector, private sector banks, and a lot of cooperative banks of late. So clearly, we are seeing mainstreaming of some of these products and openness among bankers to adopt these tech solutions. And we would definitely love to hear from SatSure team in terms of their experience in developing such models and what else satellite imagery can do for the benefit of not just Indian agriculture, I would say global agriculture, because a lot of these models are globally relevant, and how they would ultimately benefit farmers, especially smallholder farmers. So that's the topic of today's discussion. And with that, I'll hand over mic to Rashmeet to just share a little bit about SatSure before we get into the discussion. Over to you, Rashmeet.
Thank you, Hemendra sir, for the kind words. As Hemendra sir said, we are a deep tech decision intelligence company. We are a 5-year-old company who leverages advances in satellite remote sensing, machine learning, big data analytics, cloud computing to create products and solutions which helps enterprises and their people to make smart decisions. We have 3 core products. The first one is SatSure Sage, in which we are pretty well known in this market, especially in the agriculture sector, what Hemendra sir was mentioning about. It's a suite of applications that facilitate smart decision-making in management of agriculture loan for lending institutions and helping them smartly scale, along with reducing the operational cost, which is a huge one for them, and at the same time helping the farmers to get access to the credit. The second core product is SatSure Sparta, which is basically a data as a service model, which provides ready to analyze crop data set derived using satellite remote sensing and giving it through APIs, which helps our clients and the other enterprises to create a flexible application without even analyzing the satellite remote sensing data, which is sometimes a tedious job to do if you do not have a relevant infrastructure. The third one is SatSure Skies, which is high resolution change detection product focused on infrastructure, energy, aviation, and utility sector. On top of that, we are headquartered in India, whereas we have business unit in Switzerland, UK, and US. Over to you, Hemant sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashmit. Thanks for the introduction. And along with Rashmit, we have a leadership team from SatSure participating on this call. We have Amit Salunke, we have Bharat Agrawal, and we have Sarvesh Kurane. Amit, Bharat, Sarvesh, if you can just give a one-line introduction of yourself, that will help. We can start with Amit.
Hi, so I'm Amit Salunke. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at SatSure. I am responsible for the commercial engagement as well as the sales at SatSure. Thank you. It's great to be here on this platform.
Thanks, Amit. Bharat, can you come in?
Yeah, hi everyone on the call. My name is Bharat Agrawal. I'm VP Products at SatSure. Essentially, what I do is my job is to build products for the different industry verticals that we work in. In terms of background, before joining SatSure, I was working as an engineer in the domain of building satellites for Earth observation purpose. Yeah, thanks. Over to you, Rashmi.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, first of all, my name is Rashmi Singh Sukhmani, and I'm a co-founder and chief data officer at SatSure, where I handle the complete R&D in terms of building up the data products, in terms of remote sensing and data science here. Over to you, Hemant. Over to you, Sarvesh. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Sarvesh, can you come in, please?
Sure, I can do that. Hi, this is Sarvesh. I head marketing at SatSure. I've been associated with SatSure since 2018, and I hope we have a good session here with the key leadership like Hemant have pointed out at the session. Thank you.
Great. So thanks everyone for the introductions, and great to have all of you together on this forum. So as a format, this is the first time we are experimenting with what we will do. We have set of questions, related to the topic, and I'll read out those questions or statements, and I'll ask one of the team members to talk about it. But we would also encourage the audience to put their questions in the chat box. I'm sure you will also have a lot of questions as we progress. So we can also sort of ask those questions which are put up by audience. And we also want to do one more thing, which is what we will do for every question and statement. We'll run a poll to get your feedback. So please, participate in the poll. We'll also display the result of the poll as we go along. So that's the format for today's discussion. So with that, let me start with the first question, and that's for Amit. So Amit, there's a perception that the adoption of satellite imagery based analytics is expensive. Would love to hear your views on it, and we'll request Sarvesh to please run the poll on this.
So we'll just wait for the polls to come out. I'm quite excited to see the results. And
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarvesh, Abhijit. Oh, wow. Very interesting. So the world is divided. It's a bipolar result.
Yes. Quite interesting as a result. Okay, so obviously, the way I would want to approach this particular statement is trying to understand first what is it that satellite imaging is trying to solve over here as a problem. When we look at an end consumer, the whole thought process is they are looking at insights for making certain decisions. And the core for these insights is obviously the satellite imaging. In case of in case of agriculture today, typically we have reached a point where we use low or medium range imageries to solve or basically imageries which are publicly available free data sets. Now, these data sets are one point, obviously, but if you look at some other problems that we may want to solve from an infrastructure perspective or others where resolution plays a very important role. So as long as we are using low and medium range imageries, which are public available data, we can analyze the same and make it available for consumption. Obviously, when we see analysis, it depends upon what kind of parameters we are trying to derive. From an agri perspective, thanks to the overall work that has happened within SatSure, where we have been able to create our own proprietary signatures, we have been able to bring in our algorithms, we have been able to create patented products. Today, the use cases that we are widely resolving across banking, insurance, or agri input companies, we have been able to bring economy at scale and offer solutions which are very low cost. So when it comes to insurance, the district level products are really competitive in nature. In fact, we are from the product perspective, our offerings as well as the cost are very competitive. Within the banking segment, as you rightly mentioned, sir, TransUnion Sibyl has done a tie-up with us where we are trying to bring the scale, giving an opportunity for banks to consume satellite imagery data at a low cost and resolve their problems. So agree, yes, we have been able to achieve that as a service. Infrastructure is what next we are involved in.
Great, Amit. That clarifies a lot of things. So just give us a sense. Does it cost a few cents or does it cost a few dollars per hectare? Or there's no
Sir,
answer for it?
economy, as I said, economy of scale plays a very important role over here. So, for example, if I am looking at analyzing an entire district, maybe for an input industry, for an insurance, or for a banking industry, definitely the prices will be in couple of cents. When we are looking at analyzing part parcels, maybe a village or maybe a tehsil, typically the economy of scale still allows us to offer it in couple of dollars. So that's the diversion that we have been able to bring across this industry.
But it's still far cheaper than doing a physical visit and getting the data. I guess it's far more scalable and affordable.
Definitely. As we progress, there are each one of us would want to put insights on that. But you are absolutely right, sir. The way the whole thought process is that we bring in a cost-effective, scalable model which can be easily consumed for various requirements.
Right. Great. I think there are a lot of questions coming in the chat box. So if any one of you get time, you can answer there, or I can pick the questions at a later stage. So with that, we'll go to the next question, which is for Rashmit. And the statement is the insights delivered with satellite imagery by companies like SatSure are also available on Google Maps. So Rashmit, what do you say? Let audience poll go first, and then you can. Oh. So there are very few yes, and over 90% is no. So I think a lot of audience believe that it is not available on Google Maps. But Rashmit, please go ahead with your
So
expert.
I completely agree with the audience here. I'll just break down my answer in a more simpler way. When you look at the Google Images, right, it's more of used for the navigation purpose. In terms of like the information is just in the RGB spectrum. and that information cannot be exported out of the Google Maps, and the application could be built on that. Whereas satellite data provides you a different spectrum itself, where your information is in different bands in electromagnetic spectrum, which plays an important role in terms of understanding what features are there, understanding in terms of what's happening over those features. That's one. Second, the core expertise that you need to have in terms of analyzing that information. In the reason being, like, it's not something that you could see using your own eye here. Rather, you need to also understand how the science works behind that, in terms of how, let's say, for example, if I talk about NDVI profile, if the audience are aware of that, it's a vegetation index which has been derived using near infrared and red and that way, which is used for the phenology modeling. That's a good proxy to understand whether the vegetation is available in the satellite image or not. But the same analysis, I cannot do that. Second, your Google Maps are static images, in the sense like that gets updated once in a while that way. And top of that, the more updation happens only on the urban areas, not on the rural areas. That's where the challenges are. Second, so you cannot do any temporal analysis, like time by time, what are the changes that's happening. Second will be, as I told you, the spectral information in terms of the bands as such. The third one will be in terms of the resolution here, right? If you talk about any PNG image, you cannot just drill down and identify what feature it is. Whereas when it comes to the satellite data, you can, there's a depth to the information in terms of the spatial aspect, in terms of understanding the features. So that's a different thing. Top of that, you can use, yes, freely available data, which has been provided by, let's say, European Space Agency, NASA, that way. But you need to have your own pipeline to create the scalable model. So that's a different challenge as altogether. So I completely agree with the audience that you cannot build the same kind of application using Google Maps, whereas you absolutely need satellite image if you're looking at the large area analytics.
No, that's a great answer, and thanks for clarifying. So clearly, more number of bands, which are, and more frequency and more analytics, which typically you don't get in a Google Map, especially for rural areas. I think that is another important point.
Exactly.
A lot of Google Map applications are for urban areas. In fact, I get lost on a Google Map in a rural area. It's not easy to navigate sometimes because it doesn't capture a lot of data from rural landscape. So thanks, Ashmit. So with that, we'll go to the next question, which is for Bharat. So the question is, real-time insights can be generated from satellite imagery. And again, request the audience to please put their verdict on the poll, and before we get Bharat into the discussion. Again, it's a kind of a divided opinion. Yes, 59%, no, 41%. So Bharat, you have a tough job to do. So tell us what's possible in real time and what's not.
Yes, that's a very important question. So let's think about it. So when we're talking about insights from satellite data, especially for agriculture, what exactly does it mean? It being real time or not? How much time? What's the time essentially that it takes between an event that happens on the ground and the time at which the insight is delivered? There are essentially two main things that have to happen. First is the acquisition of the image by a satellite, and second is the use of that image for a certain analysis for an insight to be generated. Now, when it comes to acquisition of an image, this is done by various satellite constellations, and usually the way these constellations are built is they revisit the same piece of land at a certain frequency. So there are, for example, the Sentinel series of satellites that revisits at 10 days frequency. Then there is Landsat at a different frequency and so on. So if you take all of them together, the frequency of revisit falls somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 days. So that means if an event happens, it can be detected up to 10 days later, right? So that there itself, there's a bit of gap involved. Now, once an image is there, then analysis has to be undertaken. There again, you can, if you think about the kind of analysis that is done on an image, there are broadly two types of analysis. One is we are trying to track certain health and moisture indices on the field. Those are near real time here. That means that as soon as an image is acquired, immediately we can get those indices and plot it and see over a period of time. Why? Because the process to get those indices done is fairly standardized and automated to a large extent. It is well accepted within the scientific community, the process to do that. But when we are talking about insights for agriculture, it's these indices, simply tracking these indices does not necessarily give us a lot of insight, because extra expert knowledge judgment is required to interpret these indices, right? So what we do essentially is at the beginning of an agricultural season, we look at the crop calendar. We see within the crop calendar what are the main events that we're trying to track. For example, events like the happening of sowing, identification of crop. Then once the crop is there, then we are trying to track what is the crop ready to be harvested? Has the crop been harvested? What is the estimated sort of yield at the end of the season? So all of these happen at different times during the season, and different analysis is required for each of these events, different procedures and algorithms. And to do these procedures, there's a lot of expert judgment that goes into this, which is acquired over a longer duration of time. So there, precisely with these events, so these are near real time. They are not exactly real time, but then considering the use case of agriculture, they are directly mapped with the event that happens on the ground. So there is a of lag, but then for the purpose of application, it is sufficient.
Right. You're saying the sensitivity is not that high. So even if we are like few days lag, it does serve the purpose, right? As far as the crop events are concerned, from sowing to harvest, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But let's say if there is a forest fire, for example, and you want to know what's happening, you're hearing a lot about that. So can those be captured almost real time?
Yes.
There is some.
Yeah. So there the main limitation there is just the acquisition of the image, which typically takes up to 5 to 10 days. And as soon as the image is acquired, the analysis, since we know that we're trying to analyze, let's say, damage due to fire or damage due to flood or damage due to a drought. So that analysis happens in perhaps less than a day. So there we have had customers not only in India, but across the world, like Philippines and in Africa, where we have identified or estimated the extent of damage due to such events.
Bharat, it's a very layman question, I think for the understanding of our audience. Also, typically, what is the distance of these satellites from Earth, and how frequently do they travel around Earth? Are there any standards around it, or it
Yes.
really depends?
Yeah, very good. I mean, I happen to answer this question a lot for our customers. So most of the Earth observation satellites, they range in they lie in the range of roughly 500 to 800 kilometers above the surface of Earth, and they are usually put in a polar orbit, meaning high inclination orbit, so that So in that orbit, it usually takes about 90 minutes to complete one orbit. That means in 24 hours, that's 16 rotations of Earth. But every new rotation, in the next rotation, the Earth has also rotated. So in the next rotation, it's looking at a different piece of land. So that is why you need a bunch of satellites in a constellation if you want to achieve a certain revisit time. And that is what the mission design element of a satellite constellation is.
Right. So it's a relative motion. Both Earth and the satellite both are moving.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Thanks very much, Bharat, for this detailed answer. And with that, we'll go to the next question, which is again for Bharat. The question is: satellite imagery helps identification of crops. Hang on, just a minute. The satellite imagery helps identification of crops and its parameters with a high accuracy. So we can run the poll. So I think, Bharat, you again have a divided opinion. So almost 59% saying yes and 41% don't agree with that. So tell us, can we really identify the crop signatures and parameters with high accuracy?
Yes, indeed. Identifying crop is an important component of the insights that we're trying to generate. Why? Because if we're trying to, let's say, identify the stage of a certain crop or expected date of harvest and so on, all these are crop dependent. So identifying the crop is quite essential for if we want to have good accuracy in terms of our insights. Now, how do we identify crops? So the simple trick that we use when we're trying to do remote sensing analysis of satellite data to identify crops, the simple trick that we use is each crop has a different behavior when in over a period of time when we observe it using satellites, right? Its starting point, the way it grows or how fast it grows, what is the maximum sort of peak it achieves, or how fast it descends after a peak is achieved, and so on. So these are certain features that we can use to identify certain crop. So at SatSure, essentially what we have done is over the period of last more than 5 years, by working with a very diverse set of customers that includes not just banks and insurance companies, but also governments. And through our set of customers and ourselves, we have collected a lot of ground data also so what we have done is we've created a library of signature, so to say. So that means how does, let's say, wheat look like? How does a wheat behave in a time series over a period of time? So we have signatures which are different geographies are different way of way how a crop will look like, and and these signatures have been built over a period of time using AI/ML models as well. So the next time we want to analyze a crop, we can look up the signature in our library and say that, okay, what is the closest match? Right? That's the basic thesis around it, speaking in a very simplified manner. Next question naturally arises, which are those crops that we can today analyze, right? So think of it like this. Today we can analyze more than 16 crops, which are basically all your field crops, which are open in the field, which grow openly in the field, and are largely populated in a monoculture pattern. Multi-cropping and intercropping is slightly difficult because there the signature becomes fused and the accuracy reduces. Which are those 16 crops? Like these are all your grains like wheat, paddy, and coarse grains, maize, and so on. These include all sorts of pulses, grams, green grams, black grams, and so on. These include cash crops like cotton, soybean, sugarcane. And something to also understand is this is also another question that we get asked a lot. Can we analyze horticulture crops using satellites? So there we have to understand there's a bit of limitation when it comes to horticulture. Why? Because a lot of horticulture is crops are like annual crops, and their signatures seem quite similar to each other. So it's very difficult to distinguish. So a lot more work has to be done if we want to identify specific horticulture crop type there. But what we can essentially do today is we can certainly identify whether in a certain patch of land there is horticulture or not. So yeah, what type of crop there is, that is something which is slightly difficult. I'll quickly put some numbers on the accuracy here, because we've done these validations with our customers. So for example, government of Telangana is a classic case where we work with the agriculture department there, and they, in order to validate the results that we published, they mobilized more than 10,000 agriculture extension officers across the state and collected different data points. And in that we were able to demonstrate accuracies which depend also on the crop. So for example, in case of paddy, we were able to demonstrate accuracies better than 95%. In case of other crops like groundnut and the accuracy was better than 85%. The minor the crop, the difficult it becomes. That only means that more amount of ground data points are required in order to achieve better accuracy. So that's how we can think about it.
There are some following questions. So again, from sowing to harvest, the crop sort of height increases, right? And it varies from crop to crop. Some are low height crops, some are like sugarcane, is slightly, the height is more. So at what stage of the crop cycle can you predict? Because I think when the plant has just come out of the soil, it's tough to predict, I guess. And when it reaches a certain height, probably it's easy to predict. Is that theory correct?
Yes, that's indeed right, because when the plant has just germinated, it's difficult to even identify even using naked eyes. I mean, right. So in order to do the time series analysis using satellite data, we need to have a certain amount of history on the crop before we can say what crop it is. So typically, we take a window of about 45 to 60 days after plantation has happened before we can reliably identify a certain crop. That's the rule of thumb we can have.
Okay. And there's a question in the chat box that also in each crop there are different kind of varieties. Like in rice, for example, basmati, non-basmati, and then again there are like 1,000 varieties of rice. So I don't know, has the tech evolved to even identify the variety, or it will take some time to do a varietal identification for a particular crop?
Right. So to do variety identification within a certain crop, what we need is more fine observations of the spectral bands. So which is done using hyperspectral images. So what we generally use is multispectral images, which has anywhere from 10 to 12 bands, which ranges from visible, of course, and then infrared and far infrared. But in a hyperspectral, the same spectrum is chopped more finely, and you can trace that observation more very finely. Now, but hyperspectral has its own limitation. What we have done, in fact, this was a project we ran last year with government of Telangana. They wanted to distinguish between two different varieties of rice in a certain area. So we flew drones in that area, and we tried to do variety identification. Drones give us data at a resolution of about 8 centimeters. And we developed a model there, and we achieved fairly good amount of accuracy there. The only thing is, drones become difficult to scale at a large level. So that is a challenge. But yeah, we in our findings, drones are fairly reliable there. But hyperspectral is the true answer to variety identification.
And the last question on this is, does crop signature vary by geography? So let's say a maize in India versus maize in Brazil. Is there a difference, or is like the standard sort of signatures apply to? So it's like, is it geography agnostic, or do you need to calibrate by geography also?
I think I will invite Rashmi to answer this question in a more accurate manner.
Yes, sir, it varies. I think because it's highly related to the farm management practices, availability of water, the soil type, like an agroclimatic zone. Like India has like more than 140 agroclimatic zone, right? If I look at, let's say, the paddy signature, especially in Andhra Pradesh, it will be almost similar though, in terms of the duration as such. or it could go beyond that, but a signature will be similar. It's just that the amplitude of those signatures will differ. And that's how, if you see the yield estimates as well, right? The yield values that generally when we get after doing the CC experiment, Odisha is much lower as compared to the yield of paddy, let's say in Andhra Pradesh. So it varies. And region to, like, I'm talking about India here. If I look at the same maize in India and same maize in Brazil, there's a huge difference in the signature in terms of the amplitude here.
Okay, no, so clearly the task is cut out for someone like SatSure. That calibration is equally important. It's not just a
Calibration,
copy paste.
yeah.
Okay, great. So with that, we can move on to the next question, which is insight from satellite imagery can be sent directly to farmers and field staff and eliminates the need of field visits. That audience give their opinion, and this question is for Amit.
Great, Sivan.
A divided opinion, 55% yes and 45% no. So Amit, over to you.
Yes, sir. So, so basically, in our day-to-day interaction, being a part of the sales team, when we meet customers, when we speak to them, this is a wish list that all of them carry. That is it something that I can give directly to my field team and can give direct. Our observation in past 4 years, while working with multiple enterprises, has been that it actually, it's not the data, it's the insights. And these insights actually complement a lot of ground operations. I mean, to give you an example, we work with a very large mechanization company in India, which is more into tractors and harvesters and sprayers. The traditional way of the industry is you do a lot of ground sampling and do and complete inventory management. When the tractors have to be brought in, when the harvesters have to be brought in, and there was a lot of discrepancy in that data. Obviously, you need field team to have a good relationship with those customers, those farmers, so that you can do upsell and cross-sell of products and services. But what was really required was uh, where the season has really started, the sowing has happened, how has been the crop health, which are the areas which are going more and more into harvesting. Now, this is an insight which SatSure is able to generate and give it to the people on the ground. And today the consumers are able to use it and achieve a scale. The scale is in terms of the reachability. So today we have analytics which says that, okay, typically a field officer was able to work with 100 of farmers. Today the scale is he can reach out to 200, 250 farmers because he exactly knows where he has to go, whom he has to meet. And also from an organization's perspective, the kind of geographies that they work in, they know exactly which inventory has to be in which village, so that the efficiency is also been achieved. So both scale and efficiencies are there. But as far as the field staff is concerned, I personally believe that to build that relationship with those farmers, you will continue to have them. Satellite imaging is going to complement that entire process and help in terms of efficiency. As far as farmers are concerned, insights are something that they traditionally consume. So looking at an image is not something that, at least in farmers in Southeast Asia, would typically be able to derive something. Globally, it's a different trend. Country to country, there are different use cases. But over here, for example, a drop in NDVI or a change in your chlorophyll levels or maybe NDWI may not give a meaningful insight to a farmer who is there on the ground, a small and a marginal farmer. There are few exceptional farmers. We typically categorize them as progressive farmers who can do a really end consumption. But what they are looking at is the advisory that gets generated out of it. So the real consumer in this case may not be the farmer, but an agronomist to whom, when this data been given, can derive the requisite insights, information, and push it to the relevant farmers. So today, using SatSure's applications like CropTrail or the satellite imaging solutions, uh, agronomists working with various FPOs, working with various input companies are able to give advisories at a plot level for a certain crop that the farmer has been doing. So to summarize it, typically the elimination may never happen. The field staff will continue to utilize this data to complement their work on the ground. And as far as the farmers are concerned, with time when they become progressive, yes. But currently it is the agronomist which typically helps the farmer to get the insights.
Okay. So yeah, clearly it's all about enabling and empowering
Yes.
the field staff and the agronomist, as you mentioned. So yeah, it's not a fully digital model as a lot of us perceive. There is a need for physical resources on the ground. As of now, I'm sure as the ecosystem matures, it could change, but clearly there's a need for the field staff and an agronomist to give the insights to the farmer. So that's great. And with that, we can move on to the next question, which is for Bharat. Satellite images are able to provide farm level insights. I think this is a very important question. Let audience vote for it. Yeah, Bharat. So 75% believe it can provide farm level insight and 25% don't agree with it. And we are talking farms which are small, 1 hectare, not like US or Brazil, where it runs into thousands of hectares. So what do you, Bharat?
Right. So let's try to understand what does it mean, farm level insights. So, and a lot of people perceive it as, as to be used for precision agriculture. Precision agriculture meaning, precisely knowing within a farm precisely what's going wrong, where it's going wrong, and then taking corrective actions. And this information is to be used by a farmer, right? That's the basic idea here. So when due to the sort of resolution of the images that we're using for the purpose of agriculture, the satellite images are rather limited when it comes to using them for precision agriculture. That's not really the main intended use here. For doing that, perhaps drones are a better, although they have a limitation that they have to be flown multiple times to generate these insights. Yeah, and the fact that the farm size here is so small, that also doesn't help the cause, because if the farm size were more, then that can be the use case becomes a lot more important. So that doesn't mean that we can't derive farm level insights here. So for example, today we in our joint offering with Sybil, what we're providing to banks is like insights at a farm level of the farmers who are either applying for loan or have already got loan from the banks. So there we provide insights like what is the history of agriculture on that land, what crop has been going, what was the expected estimated output from that farm, overall long-term trends. This is the banking example. You can also take the example of farm management at a large scale for let's say agri input corporation like a seed corporation or a fertilizer corporation who have these research and development farms across a large geography. So there they need insights on what's going on in their geographically widely spread out farms, and that is where the utility of insights at a farm level becomes really important using satellites. So there we are able to reliably give insights to these cluster managers for them to be better to better manage their farms.
Right. So we need to identify parameters which actually differ from farm to farm. Like I would assume soil moisture won't change significantly from one farm to another, for example. But there could be another parameter which could be very farm specific, where satellite imagery can play a role. Right. And what is the minimum resolution which satellite imagery can capture? Sorry, what can it go to 1 by 1 meter? Can it go to 10 by 10 meter? What is that resolution that we can capture?
So today, if you look at the state of the art in the satellite technology, we are able to capture images which have a resolution of 0.3 meters, that's 30 centimeters. And satellite constellations which get images at 1 meter resolution or below, there are very few, just one or two. I mean, you can name them. There is Maxar, then there is Airbus, and yeah. When it comes to 3 to 5 meter resolution, there are a few more providers. For example, Spot series, that I think their resolution is in the range of 2 to 3 meters, if I'm not wrong. So now the point here, it's a very important point to understand that we could use those very high resolution 0.3 meter resolution images for doing analysis. But then those images are also very, very expensive. They are not, right. Each image typically goes, the cost of an image goes in the range of $40 to $60 per square kilometer, right? And just imagine, for doing analysis of agriculture, we need a time series image. Like one image is not enough. Like it barely answers any question, right? So the unit economics when it comes to agriculture does not make sense if I'm trying to do the analysis using high res data. So hence we are limited to publicly available data sets here, data sets which are created by satellite constellations which are owned by government agencies across the globe. For example, NASA or ESA, European Space Agency, because they are publicly funded programs. They publish their data sets free of cost for anyone who wants to, not just like application builders like us, but also to the whole research community. And that data comes at a resolution of what, 10 meter by 10 meter. So that's the sort of state of the art as of now.
I think most of the farms would typically in India are upwards of 10 by 10 meter kind of area. So I assume that's good enough. And one has to see the trade-off between resolution and the cost. That's also a very important point that you mentioned.
So to give a metric, let's say it's a 1 hectare farm, which is 100 meters by 100 meters, which it will have, 100 pixels in it. So yeah, that's a good metric to have.
That's a good metric. Okay, good. With that, we'll move to our next question. And that's for Amit. Sorry. That's for Rashmit. And the question is, yield estimation can be done with satellite imagery. I think again a very important question. I think a lot of insurance claims are dependent on this answer. So let audience vote and then we go to Rashmit.
Sure. Okay.
Overwhelming, yes. More than 80%, yes. So, Rashmit,
Sure,
let
sir.
us know.
No, definitely. I'll give my 2 cents and also share my experience doing the yield modeling. See, first we need to understand what are we actually talking about, right? And what are the limitations to that? First, are we talking about the actual yield or a potential yield? There are two different things here. When we talk about a potential yield, it's more in terms of when you have a normal bumper year, what could be the potential yield of a particular farm? That's the actual definition where you have a control parameters, advocate water requirements, proper nutrition, advocate sunlight is there. There's no external parameters that's affecting the crop growth as such. Then yes, definitely that's your potential yield. Whereas the actual yield is basically even your CC experiment are not able to give you that. When we conduct a CC experiment, what that does is basically you cut down 5 meter by 5 meter box or 10 meter by 10 meter box. You do it on a random sampling basis over a district, and as per the PMFBY guidelines, and then you take an average of that and you declare that this is an average yield of that complete district. But the challenge is, yes, we could model it. There's extensive work that has been done by pioneers here, like Darwal sir, Shibendu Ray sir, as in who are known in this domain, right? But what they have also identified, there are some localized parameters that also has to be used. Now, when we talk about the satellite data, I completely agree with the audience that yes, you could actually estimate the yield, but it will be more tilted towards the potential yield, because reason being you cannot just completely rely on satellite data altogether. You need some exogenous variable like your temperature, agroclimatic zone, soil type, whether it's rain fed, irrigated, all those parameter comes into picture to do that modeling. Okay, so this all, and now there's a state of the art solution that's coming in terms of machine learning, deep learning. But the challenge here in Indian context is the availability of a training data. What I mean by that is there's no common repository of CCE data. Either that's been done by the insurance companies, which is available for their usage, and or it is the government. It's not at a common place. Second, also somewhere it's in a digital format, somewhere it's in the hard copy format. So utilization of that information is really difficult. So what people have done is they have created an empirical solution around it by looking at the regional parameters, what could affect that, and then derived then they have modeled the yield as per the CC data. For us, it's easier. Reason being, we also doing the same thing like a potential yield as well, but we are constantly updating it at our end, because we have created an ecosystem where we are working with our partners, clients, who constantly give us the feedback in terms of the training data, ground truth information as such. So we are utilizing that information and constantly reworking on our models. So that's where we are able to come closer to the actual yield estimates, but not exactly. There will always be a yield gap, which
Right.
will be the issue in the developed countries like US, where you have homogeneous pattern there.
Of course, it's a very tough problem to solve, but yeah, we're getting closer with more training of data. And as you rightly mentioned, ground truthing is also important. Satellite imagery alone can't answer it. So that clarifies. So with that, we come to the last question, and that's also for Rashmit. And I think the question is, the pest detection and prediction can be done with satellite imagery. So let's go for the audience poll. So yeah, 61% yes and 39% no. So Rashmit, again, your views on this, given the fact that pest attack is a very critical event and it does damage a lot of crop. 20 to 25% get lost because of pest attack in India. So can satellite imagery predict it?
Yes, sir. I think see, I have a bit biased opinion here. Same as what I told you all about the yield, right? It's the same thing that goes for the pest as well. The availability of the ground truth information. But when it comes to the satellite data, you can assess the impact of the pest. You cannot predict whether the pest will occur or not. Two different aspects. That's where you need to understand in terms of other parameters, how that will influence the state where the pest could happen. So it's more of a deterministic model that we need to look at here. Like for example, if I look at pink bollworm, right, is there for the cotton, right? There's a certain temperature range, relative humidity range, pressure range. During that ranges only the pest happens, but it's not necessary that it could happen. Okay, but if it happens, then there is a satellite data to assess the impact in terms of the area, how much the extent of the damage is, and how it's impacting the yield, the performance in a region. Okay, all those things. But as a satellite data in silos cannot solve that problem, but you'll have to use some other data. That's one. But there are some good agencies who are actually doing that. For example, your ICRISAT. Okay, they are doing it, as in they have a huge repository in terms of the pest attacks, locational information, which is not publicly available. Why I'm saying is that because based on our experience while working with project of climate resilience for agriculture for Maharashtra government, right? One of the tasks that was given to us to identify the pest. But the challenge that we faced was we were not able to assess whether the pest could come or not, but yes, we were able to assess the extent of the damage after knowing that event has occurred. Okay, so that's the challenge with the pest, but in silos, satellite data cannot individually solve that issue, even with respect to your modeling capabilities. You'll have to go with some other source in conjunction.
Great. No, that's an honest answer. We should know what it can and what it cannot. So that's great. So I think we're done with all the questions and we are almost on time, but I see lots of questions in the chat box. So we probably can't take all of them, but let's take some of them. So one question which is on satellite imagery versus drone imagery, when to use what, there's always a, are there any applications where drone is better? Are there any applications where satellite image is better? Anyone of you can answer this.
I'll take that, sir. I think I've worked on both the data. See, there are pros and cons for both, but what we believe is that drone imagery analytics is good complementary over the satellite data analytics. Okay, reason being drone imagery helps you to further drill down the information, whereas satellite data provides you the large area coverage here. So for example, yeah, somebody was asking in terms of variety identification, as Bharat also said, in terms of how can you identify the varieties in a crop, where when you look at the satellite data, you'll have almost similar kind of signatures, even for two different varieties. And it gets really difficult in terms of building a machine learning models as such to identify those signatures. That's where the drone imagery comes into picture to drill down that information further for us and identify the varieties here. That's one. Second, I'll go back to the initial statement of whether the pest could be identified or not. Drone imagery actually complements that. Reason being, people have developed like good application in terms of the mobile imagery, drone imagery in terms of identifying what's the status of the pest, what's the extent of that. And that information in conjunction with satellite data analytics helps us to assess the complete impact and do the proper modeling in terms of the prediction as well.
Okay, no, that clarifies. Another big question, I'm sure you must have been asked this hundreds of times, the challenge of cloud cover. Can satellite penetrate through a cloud cover, especially when it is a monsoon season and the kharif is grown in monsoon season? So how do you encounter that?
Bharat, you want to take that or should I?
Yeah, I can take that. So yeah, indeed, cloud cover is an important limitation here, and because we're dealing with optical data here, and optical, right? If there is cloud, we can't see, which has been an internal headache for us in order to do the analysis that we're doing. So now what we did is we in order to solve this problem, we developed deep AI models to basically recreate an optical image using radar data. As you know, radar data or SAR data can penetrate through clouds. But the thing is, radar is in a very different domain. The whole physics of observing or taking images from some radar is very different from how it is done using optical data. So um, whenever we do feel the need, we regenerate a image using SAT data and try to, and it is essentially because we are doing time series analysis here. If not enough data is there in the time series, we can't do conclusive results here. So Cygnus is the data product that we have today. It's not only used internally by our remote sensing teams today, but it's also used today by the research teams of big corporations, seed corporations, where they have developed their own models, but they also face the same problem, and they use our Cygnus data in order to fill the gaps in their models. So it is a problem which has been solved essentially. Yeah.
Great. What I want to hear, especially for countries where significant part of the year is is a cloud cover. So that's a very important problem to solve. So good to see that there are radar satellites which can do the job. Maybe one last question, if you can take it, is in terms of the data which SatSure buys. Is it publicly available satellite data, or which you buy from syndicates, as you mentioned, Rashmit, like NASA, etc., or you have to purchase the data for yourself?
So honestly, that depends on the application. Okay. For example, if you talk about agriculture, right, you need medium resolution data, which is publicly available, which has been provided by European Space Agency in terms of Sentinel-2 and Sentinel-1 data, which is 10-meter resolution, whereas NASA provides Landsat information, which is at 30 meter, which is good enough to solve the issue. But whereas when it comes to the high resolution use cases like infrastructure monitoring, more of a precision agriculture, that's where you need to rely on those less than 1 meter information, and that's where you need to go to there are players available like your Maxa, Digital Globe, given by ISRO as well, Cartosat data, right? These are the people. So that's where we need to go and buy that information, data. So it's not a syndicate, I would call it, but these are the data providers when it comes to the high resolution information.
Great. I think there are a lot of audience on the call, so maybe we can take a few more questions. I don't want to disappoint them. And there's one very interesting question which has come: how climate change is impacting the satellite imagery, considering some kind of ML is involved in it, and how satellite imagery will help climate change narrative with data. So is that a challenge or an opportunity? How do you see climate change impacting satellite imagery application?
Actually, it's an opportunity, honestly. Reason being, if you look at the current PMFY guideline as well, to declare a drought in a region, you need to do some kind of remote sensing analysis in terms of understanding the impact there. So that's been developed. The complete methodology is being developed by MNCFC, Mahananagar National Crop Forecasting Center, to understand what's the extent of the damage, when can you declare a drought as such, all those things in conjunction with the actual status that's happening over the ground. That's one part. Second, definitely in terms right now, the things are so changing drastically in terms of the climate. whereas it will be operationally really costly if you do it on by sending people on the ground. So it's a good opportunity as such, where it's a good use case to solve using satellite data.
Right. And someone has asked, is there a case study where you can talk about how your clients have benefited from SatSure sort of imagery application? You want to talk, you can talk about farmers, you can talk about banks you work with, how they benefit by working with SatSure.
So,
Amit, yeah, go ahead, please. Sorry.
sir, I'll take this question. So, a lot of content is available on our blog post. In fact, I would request Sarvesh, who heads marketing, to please put those links or put that single link of our blog post into the chat, because all the work that we have done over past few years is briefly mentioned over there. A lot of detailing has gone into it. Even if I say it's brief, whether it is bank, insurance, input industry, a lot of relative use cases of how we have solved very unique problems. So we just touch based on something called as Cygnus, which is a crowd-free imaging application. But how has it been accepted within the industry and what are its real use cases is something that has been captured in a very recent blog post that we have mentioned over there. We have already posted how we have been impacting the banking system and how traditionally we moved from just offering data insights to decision-making insights, which resulted us being partner with organizations like TransUnion Civil. So, Sarvesh, if you can put it, okay, it's already there on the blog, on the chat. I would request the audience, please visit our blog post, know more about who we are, what we do, from their perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a very specific question which has come in. Have you mapped irrigation facilities in India at the farm level? Is
Yeah,
that something?
I just
Okay,
answered
Manik.
that in the chat. Yes, we have. At a farm level, we have done that mapping. So essentially, what we're doing here is we are trying to do the time series analysis again, where we see the moisture profile at the farm and compare it with the precipitation profile. And if there is presence of moisture without a corresponding presence of precipitation, hence it can be inferred as irrigated. So we have done that. Yes, we do that.
Great. So we are 10 minutes over. Probably we'll stop it here. There are many questions coming in, and I'll request all the audience to please send those questions to us or to SatSure team. And we are happy to host another session on this topic, given the interest that we have seen. It's quite phenomenal. So thanks to all the audience for your participation and some very intriguing questions, and thanks to the SatSure team, Rashmit, Bharat, Amit, Sarvesh, for clarifying a lot of doubts. I've learned a lot myself on the satellite imagery applications when it comes to agriculture. And I think we need to educate the whole ecosystem. I think everyone has their own perception, but clearly we are seeing very interesting intersections of space tech, satellite tech, and agri tech now. And you guys have really done a great job here. So let's carry forward this mission. We hopefully will do a follow-on episode given the interest that we have seen. And once again, thanks to everyone. Also, thanks to Abhijit, my colleague at ThinkAg, who has done all the hard work in getting us together. Thanks, and have a great evening, and look forward to connect again.